What do you do on a date? How do you actually run one? How do you keep the conversation going? These are some questions that I get from a community member. And it all depends on what kind of date you're going on. If you're going on a coffee date, I would recommend sitting right next to each other and having a conversation. It's very awkward for me to see you sipping on your coffee, or even at a dinner and just eating together across from each other. And it's kind of awkward when someone has a spoonful of food, and it's weird because you're going to catch them off guard and you ask a question. So it all depends on what kind of date you're going on. Are you going on a axe throwing date? Are you going on a golfing date? Are you going doing an activity, rock climbing? So context matters in terms of what kind of date you're running, as well as what kind of questions you're going to ask, right? And so on a date, normally what I do is I like to do something with activities. Being able to be physical with each other, touching, high-fiving, shaking hands, hugging, like congratulating each other, like that's fun. You want something fun and you both enjoy it. And you get to see each other's character, each other's attitudes, and how you go about your date. And so the setting is so important. So being able to establish where you're going, where you're taking her, you going out for coffee, are you going to a dinner date? I don't really recommend any dinner dates. I really like to interact and be close with my date and chit chat. If it's just a casual date and you're like, all right with her, go on a coffee date, get to know her. If you're a little bit iffy, if you really enjoy her company, you love her energy, I like to go do a workout. I would like to do a rock climbing event or something active, and it's so casual. It's not too much pressure, and that she can leave whenever she wants. You don't want to be stuck in a 1 to 2 hour conversation and then end up it's not the best and you're stuck with a big bill at dinner and it's a little awkward. So definitely go for an interactive date. Now, in terms of asking questions and how to run a first date, this brother was asking, I've been on a couple casual coffee dates before. It's hard to keep a conversation. I always have to constantly think about how the conversation flows, and then I can feel that the girl is getting bored, and that's where it goes downhill. When the date ends, the girl is nice about it and we exchange pleasantry, but then the second date never happens. The conversation is always different with every different woman, but you're gonna have some key questions that you're asking. Let's say, for example, you're asking questions like, what do you do? Where do you go to school? What's your passions? Like the interview questions. Like if you're asking those questions, your date is done. Like you're so boring, I wouldn't even go on a hangout with you. You're so boring. Some people are like that. Some people like a logical conversation, but if you're not engaging and you're not different, then your date's not gonna be interested in you. So I would have questions that are interesting and engaging, and you got to be curious about that person. Like, who cares about what she does for work? I would say asking questions like, hey, how did you become the person that you are today? Like, what is one event that made you here? You can talk about faith, you can talk about skincare, you can talk about whatever you want. You as a man get to lead the conversation. I mean, I had a conversation with this one girl and we talked about faith, we talked about trauma, because I led the conversation, because I was interested in learning. And if she's interested in you and you're engaging, she will keep the conversation going. But it's your job to lead the conversation. So I would love in the comments to know what kind of questions you actually ask. Every date that I go on is very different. One conversation could be about faith, one conversation could be about travel, one conversation could be about food, one conversation could be about fitness. It all depends on what you're interested in and what the commonality is. You should already know some commonalities between each other. And if you don't, it's gonna be very, very hard to keep a convo going and flowing. So that's the first part. The second part, in terms of having a second date, that all depends on, have you actually planned out a date? If you're not intentional with a date and getting to know her on that second date, if you're not asking her right after, say, hey, I really enjoyed your company. I really enjoyed this date. I really like to get to know you more. Let's plan out a second date. If you're not even asking that question, like, you can kiss your second date goodbye. If you're not planning your next interaction on that date, you're done, right? It's like you're waiting for a text to come around, but you get ghosted. And so I would suggest you being able to plan out a date right then and there after the first date went well. And if you want to have an engaged first date, being able to have touch points where you're breaking the touch barrier. Are you hugging her, or are you just shaking her hand or giving her high fives? Like, are you being intimate with her? Are you flirting? There's so many different levels on how you run a first date. And so these are just basic things on the surface level that you're gonna have to know. So one, how to keep a conversation going is based on what are the questions you're asking. There's so many different questions. Like I said, you can talk about faith, you can talk about food, travel, what they're interested in, your hobbies, what you can connect with. You can go on a whole tangent. But the biggest thing that you have to understand is, are you able to listen, and are you able to repeat this? And so I'm gonna make a in-depth video on actually how you can keep the conversation going. And if you don't know how to master communication, there's a video right here that you need to check out. Let me know what your thoughts on this. If you like this style of video, let me know in the comments. And any other further questions about first dates, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.